I think one of the one of the most important things about reading is to start early and often. Community is vital. Um, that's how we grow. We kind of rub up against each other and polish each other, I think, a little bit. Ask for our journals. And then he wrote in red ink, I don't know what to do with this. Why did you write this? And it was like, I gave you my heart because we have to think positively about things that are happening in our world. And if we, it's like self-fulfilling prophecy. We have to think positively.
Hi, Aurilla. How are you?
I am well, thanks. How are you, Z?
I'm good. Thank you. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation and for being here at We Are Mentally United podcast. I'm extremely grateful for that. And I'm really extremely looking forward for a conversation because you have done so many different things in your life. You're an author, you've been an educator, you've been a poet, you love gardening. So excited to dive into into your journey.
Well, I'm very honored to be able to participate in this. Thank you so much.
Of course. So, for folks who may not know of you, can you give a brief introduction about yourself?
You covered some of it. I'm Aurilla Woodburn. I'm an author. I'm a retired teacher. I'm the grandmother of one incredibly wonderful grandchild. Um, I'm a poet. I've been a journalist and a writer pretty much all my life. During the time I was teaching, I also was a girls' dean at a camp for children who were in foster care. I've been a court appointed special advocate. I'm not sure if you know that that's what that is. It's a CASA. We represent children in court when they are in foster care.
I
I've
work with
been,
CASA actually.
oh,
Yeah,
super,
because I'm a mental health
super.
therapist, so we work with a lot of DHS clients, and that brings in CASA caseworkers and folks
Oh, that's
that we
awesome.
engage in.
I'm a trained spiritual director, and I've had both done spiritual direction in the women's prison out on Havana in Colorado, and I've been a mentor out there as well. So I have some understanding of the difficulties people go through.
And how did this journey begin in terms of school, college? Did you have a vision in which area would you be focusing upon, or did things just naturally unfold?
I focused on early childhood. I had a teacher who was abusive when I was in second grade, and I decided that that should never happen to another kid. So I decided to be a teacher. I taught K1 2. And then after I retired from Jefferson County Schools, I went on to be a Title I teacher up in a residential treatment center for boys who'd gotten into some pretty serious trouble. And I worked there for about 4 years.
How challenging was that work? Because you usually see the really horrifying cases or really kids or people struggling a lot.
The children, they were young men from sixth grade through age 21 when they aged out of the system. It was a program for children who were sex offenders. And there is a misconception not all sex offenders have been abused, but some are.
Hmm.
And some of them come across that. I have no idea how that happens, but what I was able to discover was the humanity within them. And one of my favorite remembrances is one of the kids who would not come to class. He would come to the door and say, "What's my homework?" And I would give him his assignment and kept working. He'd leave and then he'd come back. "Here it is, miss." And at the end of the school year, he thanked me and told me that he knew how to do school now, that he was going to be okay.
Wow.
I put sticky notes on his work when he did it. And I always did two pluses and a suggestion. And he said they didn't matter, but at the end of the year, his notebook fell open and I found that he had all those sticky notes saved.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Same for me. Like even as I work with children aged 3 to 15, and I provide them therapy services. A lot of times, cases that come up. are really challenging, really difficult, with a lot of trauma, a lot of PTSD, a lot of abuse within the family. And sometimes there is progress is really slow, or there is a lot of lack of progress, and those days sometimes become really hard. But then when stories like you just shared, those kinds of incidents happen, it just makes the work all the more worthwhile to do.
It does indeed. In my poetry book, Snapshots, I have a poem, doesn't use his name, but one of the things I learned from him, he was pretty wounded kid. And he came up to me one day and he said, "Can I show you a handshake?" And I said, "I don't know. Is this," because I knew he'd been associated with gangs. I need to know what it means. And so I
Mhm.
walked away. And then I realized this was not okay. I needed to really see him and hear what he had to say. So the next day he came up and asked again. And he said, "Can I show you a handshake?" And so I reached out my hand and we did this handshake. And he said, "Now look, when you hold your fingers like this means I love you."
Ah.
And so we shook hands, and he was very gentle with me and showed me this handshake as if I was his little sister. It was just a
Mhm.
lovely, lovely moment.
Mhm. Mhm. And was this? Did you say that this journey was before you became a teacher, an early childhood teacher?
No, this was after I retired from Jefferson County Public Schools, where I taught K-1 2 literacy. And then I retired, and then I still wasn't done. I knew that there was still more in my life to do. So I applied for this position because I'd always wanted to be a Title I teacher, and that's what they
Mm-hmm.
offered me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I went up and worked there for 4 years.
How was your teaching experience like? Because I've been a therapist at two different elementary schools,
Hmm.
and I did run groups over there, and those would get really overwhelming. And I would always look at the teachers and how well they would manage up the classes, or in some situations, they'd also feel a little stressed. So there might be some agitation between the classes and stuff for them. And I would always look at them and be like, I have no clue how they're doing this, because there are 20, 25 kids in class who really don't know about their emotions, really don't know about
They
themselves.
don't understand their feelings. I've had some pretty hard things happen. And one of my real successes though was a kiddo who was, I don't know that they say they have Asperger's, but he was dealing with Asperger's syndrome. But we didn't know that. The mother just plunked him in the school and said, "Here he is." And I knew the first day of school that I was going to have a challenge there. As I came to understand him, I gave him a safe place in the classroom. I made a box, just a square on the floor out of tape. And I said, "Nobody can go in this box. You don't turn around and look at him. This is his safe place." And he had a pretty good year. This was a first grader, so he was only 6. At Thanksgiving, I realized how truly gifted he was. The kids were supposed to create a book on to illustrate and do a math problem. At Thanksgiving, this was no, I guess it was November. At Thanksgiving, I had one turkey, two salads, and they named 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 things that they had for Thanksgiving dinner. And then they were supposed to work out the math to figure out how many things were
Mm-hmm.
being served at Thanksgiving dinner. And the other kids were working on this, just struggling with their math. And he came up to me and he said, 55. And I'm totally stunned. This is a 6-year-old. And he says, "Well, it was easy. It was 10. And then 9 plus 1 is 10. That's 20. 8 plus 2 is 10. That's 30."
Mm-hmm.
And finished in, yes, it's 55. This is a 6-year-old who saw this amazing pattern
Mm-hmm.
that then I could brag on how special he is. And we need to really pay attention. But that was one of my fun discoveries about kiddos with struggles. And so for me, just learning what they need, looking at them, listening to them, making space for them to be who they are. I would often let my wigglies go up and stand in the back or dance around in the back so
Mm-hmm.
that they could listen because movement enhances listening.
Mm-hmm.
for
No.
those kiddos who are ADD or ADHD. And I often gave a chance for them to run across the playground to the fence and back. It didn't take away from class time because they were able to function better when they got back.
Mm-hmm. Movement's really,
So,
really important. I've seen that myself at schools. And I've also worked with very similar strategies with teachers in terms of having a safe place or a cozy corner where kids
mhm.
could just go and de-stress themselves. That really, really, really helps. And even in my practice, my first thing when I'm speaking with the parent is to tell them that my focus with helping or assisting the kids at this age, because as they are so young, is to find different passions that they have, or how I like to tell the kids that all of us possess superpowers or special energies, and all we have
Mhm.
to do is find them and tap into them. And then once we tap into them, then we can use them as a resource. Or as I tell
Yeah.
to parents, that then you can use that passion or that interest as an anchor to help them overcome with the struggles that they're going through.
Sounds like you had some really effective time in the classrooms.
Yeah. I tried, and it's been a learning experience really. But just looking at how teachers, especially in elementary school, just manage and just are able to be there and present with a lot of these kids who all come from different backgrounds, who all come from different households, different socio-economical backgrounds as well. It's really inspiring to see. Do you have What did you learn as a teacher starting up from when you first started it and by the time that you retired it, in terms of your strategy of working with kids?
I got my degree before my and taught for a year before I started having kids. I have two adult children. When they got to about fifth and sixth grade, I went back to school teaching. Started as a sub and then moved on into full time teaching. And I was at different kinds of schools. I was at a lower working class elementary school where there were very different issues from then I went up to a rather wealthy school up in the mountains for half a year or for half time. And I could see that they had very different problems, but mostly they needed to be seen and heard. And I'm a fairly quick study. I learn those things fairly quickly. Um, whatever it is we need as people, so do our children need as people to be seen and heard and be valued. And so I was lucky to have been able to learn that early on and to be able to learn how to do that for each different child in their own way.
Mm-hmm. Well, and in terms of like one thing that I've also noticed is having a present parent or a caregiver is also super important. Uh,
Absolutely. I did invite parents to come into my classroom to volunteer to help with reading groups so that I could have smaller groups where kids could practice reading. It wasn't really instruction, it was practice. And for kids to see their grown-ups in the classroom honoring the learning of reading. And when we had what is called dear time, drop everything and read. So everybody sat in their own spot somewhere in the room. Sometimes we had jammy days where they could sleep and sit in their jammies and read books. Then we'd have about a 20-minute drop everything and read time. And when it was so quiet and the kids really could see the reading and that we were all enjoying both each other's presence and the quality of the book that we were reading, it was awesome because kids learn from each other, just even those kinds of behaviors. And if reading is valued, then they begin to value reading. Most kids.
Very true. I like how you have also described up in the past that books open up doors to different universes and different curiosity and different areas of growth for kids.
Right.
And
Well, so many children's books take us places. There's Matilda, and I think it takes us to England, and there's another little book that takes us to France. And there are so many books that take us somewhere else in the world where we learn how people do things differently, eat different foods, what are some of the important places in their countries. They get to understand that not everybody looks like them or sounds like them. And so I believe that enhances their understanding of the world and that they're not the only, theirs isn't the only way, that there are other ways to do what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And so reading takes us all over the world.
Very true.
The older books take kids to Antarctica and Chile and Peru and Alaska and, you know, China, places that maybe they'll never physically travel to, but
Mm-hmm.
they can enjoy a little bit of that experience with their books.
Yeah, the
And that
experience and
creates an understanding of the world.
for sure. I completely resonate with it because I feel like it also introduces them to different cultures, different backgrounds, different belief systems. I grew up in Pakistan and I grew up reading Famous Five and the Twilight books, and those were my ways of getting exposed to the American community or the American society and seeing just
Mhm.
on how people go out on adventures, because Famous Five was more of an adventurous book, whereas Twilight was more mythical with vampires and other characters in it as well. How did from your education experience, working experience, then working with kids who were struggling up from different backgrounds, how did this all lead towards becoming an author?
What I had always written, but I had not written books to be published. I had just written for the fun of story writing. Early on in my teaching, I wrote a little book about an experience I had with my children, which has may someday be published. It's called right now An Adventure at Lighthouse Point. Um, that was my first attempt at actually writing something like a story. But then during COVID, we had Samara, who is the star of these books, who was about 3 when it all started. And so I sort of ran a preschool while she was kind of quarantined during COVID situations. Her parents were both working and she couldn't go to preschool. So um, I'm going to take another story and I'll come back to that.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a semi rural area. And when I wasn't outside catching crawdads and snakes and those kinds of things that people do as kids in the rural areas, I was reading a set of encyclopedias. And inside one of the encyclopedias was a fable about a farmer someone was trying to trick him out of his farmland. And it occurred to me that that could be a really fun story for Samara. So Samara and the Tricky Breeze came to be born. Um, the farmer became Samara, and Tricky Breeze became the bully that was trying to trick her out of part of her garden. So at the end of COVID, I was just about finished writing the book. It's written in rhyme, and it presents a variety of things. But the most important idea in it is that Samara was able to tame a bully by being wise and being kind and patient and just kind of putting up with him for a while. So at the end of the book, they ultimately become friends. And then you'll see Tricky Breeze, sometimes just referred to as Breeze throughout the book. So the reading that I did as a child had an impact on my writing now.
Mm-hmm.
And so life experience feeds into reading. That happens when you're teaching children literacy, when they're beginning to write. They really only pretty much write about what they know, which is I got up this morning, I did this and this and this, and then I went to bed.
Mm-hmm.
And we call them bed to bed stories. But they start writing their experience, and when their experience becomes bigger and broader, they have more to write about. And again, more curiosity to write about it.
Mm-hmm. Different horizons open up for them, different ideas open up for them. And
Mhm.
I guess for you also, Having worked with so many different kids for so many different years, you can tap into so many different characters, so many different stories when you're
Mhm.
writing of these books. And for, sorry,
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna ask you, you mentioned about your kids, you mentioned about your granddaughter. Has there been any things that have changed within your own parenting styles with them?
I am positive. Now, I only have one grandchild, so my son is the one who gave us Samara, and I know that his parenting style is different, and I think it's better than mine was. And through all my teaching, I think I've become a better grandparent than I would have been otherwise. I am also a member of Al-Anon, and I've learned a lot from doing the 12 steps that has helped me to be able to discern what's mine to deal with and what's not.
Mm-hmm.
And in Al-Anon, they call it staying in your own lane and learning how just to encourage positive growth and just kind of not ignore the bad stuff, but don't make it a bigger than it is. Don't make it a big stuff, big thing.
Mm-hmm. You also mentioned about curiosity a couple of times when you were talking about the book and the characters within it. How important do you feel like is play, creativity, outdoor time for kids in today's time and age?
Okay, outdoor time. Most kids do spend, I think most kids, at least if they have any access to the out of doors, where there is grass and tree kind of park situations, places where they can see what's really natural. Um, I think they begin to see what is there. Samara one day sat down and looked at a square of dirt about a foot square and counted the critters that she saw there. Also, it's midsummer, and so there were, flies would come and land, and grasshoppers hopped through, and there were little creepy crawly things in that little bitty plot. And she wanted to know, what's this? What's that? My son Christopher, that was his first set of words after mom and dad is, what's this? What's that? What's
Mm-hmm.
this? Kids are born with natural curiosity. All we have to do is supply them with places to be curious.
Mm-hmm.
And movement helps that. I think I talked about movement at one point in the back of one of my books, how much movement enhances brain growth, which enhances curiosity.
Mm-hmm. I feel like one of the things that parents I see are struggling a lot in today's time and age is getting their kids outside because technology, video games are just keeping a lot of these kids indoors. And then also COVID happened, which kept families indoors, not just kids.
It did.
So currently in my therapeutic practices, I'm seeing a lot of challenges for parents to get their kids out because a lot of them just want to stay inside and play these video games.
It's true. And with most parents, I'll back up, many parents working more than one job, they are lucky to be able to pack a kiddo's lunch and get them to school, much less read with them or get them outside. If parents are determined, or if they have someone in the neighborhood that they trust and feel like their kid is safe with, to take them places and do things with them. There's a wonderful book called 1001 Things to Do Outside, and that requires that parents take them off screens of any type. I mean, we're all addicted.
Mm-hmm.
Take them off screens and get outside and move and breathe and run and do somersaults and climb trees and play and just look at what's out there. Some of the kids in inner city schools never really get to see our beautiful mountains here in Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a crime against those children. That needs to be able to happen.
Yeah, yeah. And I feel like ever since we know of time, people have been outside, people have been outdoors. Oh, ourselves, yourself, your parents, your grandparents, all our generations were doing things outside. They were getting that fresh oxygen, they were getting that sunlight, and that was also giving them with the nutrients to grow. and just being indoors or just sitting in one place just it disrupts your blood circulation as well, so it causes a lot of other medical issues. So
It
it's
does.
it's really really important to push the kids or foster an environment where they can go outside, which is why I asked you before also, how important do you feel like is our engaged parenting, or engaged parents or parents who are involved, because a lot of times parents are also on their phones and not giving proper attention or building up that connection with the kid.
Exactly. I think we've kind of divided into two groups of people: indoor people, phone and screen people, and people who want to be outdoors at least some of the time. It requires a commitment, and parents need that. That comes to parent education. How important is it for you and for your child's health to be outside and doing and being and interacting with the out of doors? The
Mm-hmm.
fresh air and the sunshine that you mentioned, but also the things that you see that are living creatures, and
Mm-hmm.
what are they like? What can I learn from them?
Yeah, yeah. I'm always we have some trees around the place where I provide therapy, so I always try and take the kids up over there, make them touch the tree, make them just observe and just take some deep breaths and just see how where the air is flowing or how the leaves are moving,
Hmm.
and it within itself, not just for them, for me also, it's just so therapeutic doing that.
Yeah. Well, just being out of doors, I think, really and truly, just standing on the earth gives us a connection
Mm-hmm.
to all that the earth is and all that creation is, if you choose that concept of creation. It makes you feel more connected both to yourself and to everything else.
Yeah.
And especially being barefoot or lying on your back and watching the clouds and letting your imagination carry you places by. Well, I see a dinosaur up there, and over there's a tiger, and seeing the clouds as they change shape and form, and then sometimes just disappear. That has to cause wonder,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and that's so good for all of us.
Very true. And like sometimes I make it a practice of whenever I go to the park, I take off my shoes and I just walk in the grass. And that within itself is just, oh my God, so
Mhm.
grounding. Like I enjoy it
Mhm.
so much.
It's
Uh,
exhilarating. It helps you feel more alive.
mm-hmm.
And I think there are so many people who have been denied that, or who deny themselves that they're missing out on that aliveness that that's already in them. They just have to wake it up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. In terms of, you mentioned wake it up. In terms of for yourself, what do you do for yourself that makes you be better in terms of your own wellness? Going out for hikes, you mentioned in Colorado.
I'm not much of a hiker, but we do have a big yard, and we have put a pond in the backyard. And so it's very interesting with the pond. I go out first thing in the morning before the sun comes up and just take in the sky and the pond sounds. And once in a while, I've come face to face with a raccoon. One summer, we had a family of foxes. Mama and Papa Fox moved in under the front porch, and that summer they had 4 kits. So we got to watch those kits grow up. It was just amazing. We learned so much about their curiosity as well as our own. Um, Being outside, I do spend some time outside, and we have a puppy now, so I'm outside playing with the puppy pretty regular too. But the ducks land on the pond, a great blue heron lands on the pond. We have a couple fish in the pond, and crawdads. That's what brings the raccoons, is the crawdads. So critters, I don't know. It just feels like I'm more part of things if I see these critters. We have
Mm-hmm.
lots of birds. The chickadees and the robins are already busy nesting.
That's good. So you're really grounded and really connected within the nature.
So yes, bird watching is a pretty important thing. Chickadee is my entree bird into the bird watching world. And the reason for chickadees for me is they don't try to be anything else. They only announce and boldly, I'm a chickadee. And when they say the DDD at the end, they're telling us how far away they might be an enemy
Hmm.
of the flock. So that was a
Interesting.
new learning for me.
Interesting. Wow. I did not know about that at all. For me, we have some trees up over here right outside my bedroom, and the one of the most beautiful experiences on the weekend or even on the weekdays in the morning when the birds are all chirping and they're just being so happy and just so glad about the morning, and it
Mhm.
just feels really good waking up to the sound of that.
It does, doesn't it? It
Mm-hmm.
just makes you feel one with the world.
Yeah, very true, very true. In terms of going back to your writing and the work that you have done, can you talk a little bit more about snapshots? You mentioned that it has a poem from that you wrote to honor the kiddo or that experience that you had with the kiddo. What else is in snapshots?
So this is snapshots. That's this is the real book.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was born over several years of writing. Would you like to hear
Yes,
one of the
please.
poems in Snapshot? Okay.
Yes, please. Love to. Thank you.
Here's a little bit about being outside. Radical amazement at sun, moon, stars, big as quantum theory. Love is the heart of this cosmos. Love is the universe speaking. Love is. Love includes. Love invites. Love heals. Knowing that love, receiving that love, can carry you through the deepest valley, be your companion throughout the darkest night, sit in stillness with you in compassion. Love can dance with you, the highest happiness, the greatest gift, the fullest heart. Resting in this, O best beloved, is the greatest joy.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's really
Thank
beautiful.
you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. What was the inspiration behind this one?
Snapshots, because I had been just writing poems when I have my quiet time. I've gone outside, I've come in, I'm sitting, I might be reading something else. And so I have about 20 to 40 minutes of quiet time. And that was when I would either journal or write a poem. And I ended up with this collection of poems. And someone said, You need to publish that. And I said, Oh, yeah, really. And some other people said, You need to publish that. So ultimately, I did. And it is in Jefferson County Public Libraries now, and it has an online presence with online bookstores and things like that. And people will buy it from me in person too if they know I've written it or if they've come across it somewhere else. But it it is a result of spiritual seeking that is inspired in part by connection with nature and also connection with other people.
Yeah, no, thank you. And in terms of the creative process, especially for the poem that you just read about love,
Mhm.
how did the creative process for this specific poem came across? Like, where did that inspiration come from? How was that process like?
Ooh, boy, that's a hard question because it's often in response to something that happened in the moment, and some of these are a ways old. The poem is titled "Boundless Joy," and I think I have been just thinking about how do we love each other, how do we love ourselves, and how do we know that we are beloved? And then it just kind of wrote itself. A lot of my
Mm-hmm.
poetry seems to just kind of write itself.
Wow. Wow. So still there is an element of curiosity in that as well,
Yes,
that you're thinking, that you're reflecting. Uh, when you were young, can you remember if journaling was something that you would do? Because it feels like a lot of the way that you express yourself or have expressed yourself have been through these books. Were you always into that when you were young also?
I journaled probably starting in middle school. I had a terrible, that just reminded me, I had a terrible experience with it when I was in my senior year of high school. My mother had cancer, and two of my grandparents died. And I was journaling about that because what else do you do with those feelings when you're a 16, 17-year-old?
Mm-hmm.
So journaling, and it was a requirement in my class. And that teacher asked for our journals, and then he wrote in red ink, "I don't know what to do with this. Why did you write this?" And it was like, I gave you my heart.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be so careful with each other's hearts. And I think that's something that I learned from that because I was struggling. Um, there was hard stuff going on in my life. I don't know what he wanted to hear,
Mm-hmm.
but that really broke my heart.
No, I'm sorry. I'm really
So
sorry.
journaling is a big deal, and we have to know. I didn't know then that I couldn't trust everybody. We have to learn who. There's a discernment, I think, that comes with maturing that allows us to begin to trust and to know who we can trust and who we need to be careful with when we share our hearts.
That's a beautiful insight, and I feel like a lot of kids, a lot of younger folks as well, should take in this advice because sometimes they receive one negative feedback or one negative pushback. It really shatters them in a lot of different ways, and it just kills their motivation, their interest in some ways too.
Right, right. So it's important for those of us who care to really be listeners and encouragers because I would never have published snapshots without encouragement from multiple friends.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that took a great step of courage because it's exposing my heart.
Mm-hmm. True. Yeah, yeah. I'm really glad that you wrote it and that you had well wishers and people who were rooting up for you and were pushing you to do that because we all need those kinds of connections in our life. And I always tell people just be kind. Like it does not take an
It
effort to
doesn't
be
cost
kind. It
anything.
doesn't cost anything. Very true. Just be kind. Uh, but in terms of your own work, do you face creative blocks? Do you go through moments or situations or seasons in life where you just feel like you cannot write anything or no inspiration is coming through?
Well, I have to tell you, the current situation in our country has kind of caused me to not be able to write right now. I think I just picked up my pen this morning because we have to think positively about things that are happening in our world. And if it's like self-fulfilling prophecy. We have to think positively.
Mm-hmm.
And so I picked up my pen and wrote 8 lines, I think, this morning, mostly about some response to scripture
Mm-hmm.
and thinking about, I think most cultures might have a story similar to the prodigal son. I was reading the story of the prodigal son and thinking about the son who stayed home and was the obedient son, but he also didn't take advantage of the relationship he could have had with his father. And so that was a choice he made to limit his real connection with his family.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a thing I wrote about this morning, in fact.
Well, I'm glad that you did that because um, you have to take the first step, and after those first steps, that you take the next steps. But it's true, the current political, social, economical situations within not just this country, just around the whole world, it's really horrifying, and sometimes it's really demoralizing in terms of what we are doing within our own communities, because it just feels way too less in the moment. But
It's true.
then it's also important to remind ourselves that any step and every step is worth taking towards whatever little change
That's
that we
true.
can bring.
And that's where Samara and the rumbly rainy night sort of comes in. That's an almost natural segue because essentially it's about getting through hard times with our friends. And it's interesting to me that children and adults are finding that message in the story, even though it's just about a little girl and her stuffed animals.
Mm-hmm.
They get through a storm together and the sun comes up. So we're never alone in those struggles, even if we think we are.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's the positivity about thinking about life like that, because then it lets you look at different resources that might be around us that we are probably not even aware about. Uh,
Exactly. It opens up windows and doors so you can see opportunity.
100%, 100%. In terms of opportunity, sorry, you're gonna say
I
something.
was just, I just have some favorite pictures in here of
I was just gonna
grumbly
ask
rainy
you.
night.
I was just gonna ask you if you can read us some lines from the book.
All these stuffies that are in here actually do belong to Samara at her mom's house, at her dad's house, or at our house.
Ah, beautiful.
And so the stuffies, there's a big crack of lightning, and Samara's in bed, and she's already helped one critter in bed with her because he was frightened. Samara is brave and Samara is kind. We'll climb right up. Samara won't mind. All the stuffies snuggled, finding comfort in the crowd, though the lightning was bright and the thunder was loud. Llama's Day was peeking from under the bed till Samara pulled her in for a tender hug instead. Samara made room for everybody there. Everyone was included, even Big Burly Bear. They all fell asleep in Samara's arms. They knew that with her, they would come to no harm.
Beautiful.
And then this is the dream scene that I just love.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I my
I love the pink
my
sky. I love the pink skies. So beautiful.
yeah, my illustrator
Mystical.
is Fina Tedesco. I think
Mm-hmm.
she is absolutely amazing. She's illustrated all three of my children's books, and she's gotten better and better every time.
Is she someone that you knew before you were writing, or this was this a professional?
Someone I worked with a publishing company and she was just starting out with them, and so was I really. And they put us together and it's just been a lovely
Beautiful.
teamwork.
Amazing. That's
So
really
she
good.
is very creative.
Yeah. And also, like about Samara, I love how the character is brave and it's really mindful about things, and it's open. It's open to curiosity, and I feel like it would be such a big inspiration even for your granddaughter as she grows up. And it's a beautiful
I hope so.
gift for her also as well, a lifelong gift for her.
I hope so. When she turned 5, she'll be 8 this coming month. But when she turned 5, she jumped up in the living room and put her hands up and she said, "I'm famous." And it made us all laugh. But now she's a little less excited about grandma reading her books in her school and that kind of stuff. But it's Samara and the Rumbly Rainy Night and Samara and Tricky Breeze were included last November in an anti-racism um, newsletter as being inclusive books that kids see something different from themselves and they find a way to make connections and friends.
It's
And so
beautiful.
that was why it was included on that list. I was really pleased about that.
That's amazing. That's a really good big accomplishment, because again, books need to be inclusive for all audiences and for all kids from all backgrounds. And I'm really glad to hear that. In terms of tips and stuff, do you have tips for parents or even for teachers on how to inspire kids towards and or push kids towards reading?
I think one of the one of the most important things about reading is to start early and often. Samara had read 1,000 books before she got into kindergarten, and that was from both of her parents and from her grandparents. And I think they were reading to her even before she was born. So she was exposed to words and sounds and the music of poetry. Um, and when parents read in front of their children, they model a valuing of reading. If parents and teachers make it fun, kids begin to realize, well, reading can be fun. It doesn't have to be a chore.
Yeah.
I was very blessed with a teammate. Her name is Janice, and we had a huge opening between our rooms, so we co-taught a lot. And so instead of doing reading lessons like this is an A and this is a B and that's a C and these are the sounds they make, we gave children experiences where they needed to learn those sounds because it was important to have that experience. So we would give them, like, we wanted to study Australia. So we created a passport, and then they would go to different places in Australia and read about the animals and the places and the people. And then we would discuss them. It made it real. It wasn't some made up place or story. It was the real thing. And we we strived consistently to make their experiences physically active as well as mentally active.
Yeah.
And that's part of creating a reading experience. Have fun with it.
Mm-hmm. You have to make it look like an adventure or make it feel like an adventure and
Yeah.
not like a work. Because if it's work, then it's gonna feel tedious. That, oh, I have to read all
And
of this.
that's true. We went through a period of time in Jefferson County schools where we had prescriptive reading. And I have a friend whose children were in my classroom and we were doing the life experience reading. But then they got into this prescriptive reading as they got older, and they are just now in their 30s getting back to enjoying reading because it was painful.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't fun. It was like reading a medicine bottle,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Yeah, yeah. And I completely agree with you on that. I remember reading one of the success stories of some I think it was, if I remember it correct, it was in Nashville. There was a teacher or a librarian, and what they did was very similar to what you folks did. And she gave out different passports for different countries, or she gave out a library passport, and every time a kid would complete up a book from a different country or from a story about a different country, she would stamp that passport with
Oh,
that
how wonderful.
country stamp. So it became more
Yeah,
like an adventure, that who can collect more stamps or who can visit more
right.
countries or read characters from different countries. And that enhanced up the whole learning experience for these kids. And it there were statistics also that it increased it by, I guess, 60 or 70% in terms of just the curiosity level of kids reading more than 3 to 5 books.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. What a neat idea. We stamped their passports too, and we got on a pretend bus or an airplane to get to wherever we were going. And so we bump along in the bus and get there, and it was great fun. And I think if the kids are having, kids learn all the time. And if they're having fun, they learn even more.
Mm-hmm. And again, also, I guess going back to it, like parents need to role model it for them. They need to take interest themselves. They need to read themselves rather than just give the kid to read and then just sit there on the couch and, like, not support them in that thing.
Right.
It's a team effort. It's like parenting, and especially early childhood, where you develop a lot of these interests. It's really more of a very much of a teamwork and team effort.
It's true.
Um,
And going to the library to be able to pick out a book, that's quite an adventure. And the neat things is one of the neat things is public libraries have programs that really encourage kids to read, especially during the summer. And so there's a prize at the end of the summer for having read some books. And even if they're only reading it for the prize, they're in the books, and maybe they will discover they really enjoy it.
No,
That's the hope.
a lot of times when I speak with parents, kids come in the session and they're just so super excited. And what are they excited about? They're excited because they got their library card with their name on it. So
Mhm.
then they can keep it in their pocket or carry it everywhere. And it just, for themselves at that age, it's very empowering. And that builds
It's
up
a
that interest of going back to the library and getting a book and then returning
yes.
the book.
And librarians, they are a special breed. They are absolutely amazingly helpful and
Mm-hmm.
encouraging to kids. In fact, it was a librarian who encouraged me to publish Samara and the Tricky Breeze.
Oh wow, very nice, very good.
So
You,
yeah,
you've always been surrounded, I feel like, with people who have encouraged you to do things and stuff. How important is community to you, or people who are around you that support you?
community is vital. That's how we grow. We kind of rub up against each other and polish each other, I think, a little bit, like a couple of stones in a polishing kit. We learn from each other and we support each other if we're in a healthy community. If we're not in a healthy community, we have to learn how to set some boundaries
Mm-hmm.
and get out of whatever part of community is not helping us grow. Interactions should be life giving. Even if they're hard lessons, they should be life giving. And that's what we can do for each other with encouragement.
Yeah, yeah. The community is super important for our well-being. I personally feel like my belief is that we are going through a lot of mental health struggles because of lack of communities, because we are not as connected as we were before. And it's
Right.
just more of an individualistic society or community that we are heading towards, which is leading
It's true.
into a lot of mental health struggles as well. But in order to wrap things up, what are some of the advices that you would give to someone who wants to write books for children or who just wants to be an author?
I think just sit down and do it and trust who they already are, because in writing, they will be becoming even more. Um, I've learned a lot in writing these books, and it's just giving yourself the time to do it. A lot of people suggest that you sit down and write a little bit every day. Give yourself an hour every day. My writing works a little differently. It seems to come sometimes unbidden. I have gotten up in the middle of the night and said, I have to write this down or I'm going to lose it.
Mm-hmm.
And so that happens. But having a supportive community, a lot of people are starting to have writing groups either online or meet at the library and have some common interests. You can go online and get writing prompts that help you just get words on a page based on a prompt from what your inner knowledge and wisdom is. So mostly just sit down and write and believe in yourself.
Mm-hmm. Do you
You
have
can do it.
Yes, yes, everyone can. But like, do you have a space that you go and write in, or um, like a specific spot or a ritual that you do, or space?
I do have a writing space. It's a comfortable chair, and I usually have a notebook and or my phone. Most of my poems are in this
Mm-hmm.
because I can just sit and do it right where I am. Um, so yes, I have a place that sort of nurtures that feeling of
Mm-hmm.
I want to write. And I think if you find a place, some people find that they can write better outside. Some people sitting by a window. Some people just sitting at the kitchen table with a cup of good coffee or tea. And just, I have some favorite kinds of pens. I use
Okay.
them all the time. It's the only kind of pen I write with.
What is it?
And
Which one is it?
it is, it's a Pilot,
Pilot.
finest black ink. And they're, I just bought these, in fact. It They feel good in my hand and they write for a long time and they make a fine line so that I can use the page effectively, efficiently.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So they're great. I know that sounds kind of silly, but it's a pen that I really like.
No, I don't think it sounds silly at all. I also have specific different pens or markers that I usually use to jot down things or important things because I feel
Mhm.
like the energy on my hand just flows very much freely when I'm writing up with it as compared to some
Yes.
other tools. So
Yeah.
that's what I meant when
It just goes through you
it
from
just
your head
goes
to your
through
hand.
you.
And sometimes you don't make it go, it just
It
goes.
just goes. It just flows freely. And that's what I meant when I asked that is there a ritual or is there anything specific that you do? Because I feel like all writers or all authors or anyone who likes to write has some kind of nitty picky thing that's completely unique to themselves.
I almost always read first, or I also often listen to music, and that sort of puts me in a receptive place so that the writing can come.
For me, it's meditating a little bit, just a little bit of
Ah,
deep breathing, and then getting into the zone of writing. That really helps me flow. What's next for you? Are there any books or any things that you're currently or projects that you're working on?
I have two Samara books that I'm thinking about. One is about Samara's best friend moved away, and so I've written a few verses on that, and then I have another one, and right now I can't think of what the ideas were at the moment. Um, and then I have a book that is almost ready to publish called Stepping Stones, and it's steps along the way that is more, well, it's similar to snapshots, but there's a little bit more of the 12 steps thinking in it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one of them is a very short poem called At Sea. See if I can find it if you don't mind.
Of course, yeah, please do so.
I'm not sure I can find it quickly.
That's fine. Take your time.
It is, it's right there. At sea, boat, mast, tightly furled sail, frantic rowing, paddles deep in the water, me, straining, pulling, me, striving to reach my destination. Gentle breeze whispers, unfurl the sail, let me.
Wow. Thank you so much. This felt like a special edition. Hearing the story.
I hope so. It also draws from, I
Yeah.
have a chapter on birds, um, because it's not all hard work,
Mm-hmm.
but some of it is about birds and other natural experiences and just other bits and pieces of life, like judging my neighbor and realizing, I better take care of my own stuff first.
Life skills.
That kind of thing. Yep. Life experience stuff.
Yeah, and I think it's
So
really
I am very blessed to be able to do this.
and I'm really grateful that you're doing it because this is so much needed for the younger audience, the younger community, or the even the adults in a lot of different ways on how it makes them think or how it opens up that bubble in their brain of curiosity. And especially for the younger folks on how you're writing up these storybooks to teach them life skills, to teach them different kinds of struggles that they might go through with their friends or fears that they might have and how to accomplish those fears. How can people where can people find those books? I'm going to leave a link for all of them in the description as well. But what's the name of your website, or how can people find your books?
My website needs some work, but it's aurillawoodburn.com. And if you're interested in the books, you can just Google my name and it will come up with, I think, all four books. Um, I am in Jefferson County Public Libraries by request, and I'm working on Denver Public. The Butterfly Pavilion is considering flying creepy crawlies, and so it's they're they kind of have a life of their own, which is kind of interesting,
Mm-hmm.
something I'd never expected.
Well, I wish you all the best for that, and I hope that your books get much more love, not just in Colorado but throughout the world, because they're really on topics
Thank
that a
you.
lot of people would resonate from and would help a lot of kids grow, not just socially but within themselves and personally as well. And again,
Oh, thank you so much.
thank you so much for being on the podcast and for sharing your journey. And hopefully, we can do a part two when your other books are coming out. I'd love to stay in touch and definitely have that opportunity to record that too.
Well, thank you so much, and I appreciate your time. You are a good and gentle questioner. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I hope you have a wonderful time.
Thanks, you too.